Thrift stores have long been a way for lower-income families to afford clothing. The reselling of secondhand items began commercially in the U.S. in 1897, with the creation of the Salvation Army's Salvage Brigade. 15 years later, a Boston minister launched Goodwill, marking the creation of some of the largest thrifting chains in America. For over 100 years, these stores have been almost exclusively targeted towards low-income communities, but in recent years, that has started to change. Nowadays, thrifting is a hobby and a trend. Often, you will find multiple younger people in these stores combing through the racks of clothing to find the most coveted items. How has this change happened so quickly and recently? And why? Why do you thrift?
I mainly thrift for environmental reasons. I don't really that often, but I typically do just to protect the environment.
What do you thrift for?
I mainly thrift for t-shirts, pants, stuff that's not like jackets, coats, stuff like that.
My name is Olivia Scheel. I've been thrifting since I did it again. Been thrifting since 6th grade, as long as I can remember. I'm 18, and I really started thrifting, well, for a few different reasons. But one of the main reasons being financial issues and the fact that it's more sustainable. And also, I live in a small town and there is nothing else to do. So that has been the go-to option from day one.
The environmental impacts of fast fashion, or chain shopping, has recently been brought to light. According to sources such as planetaid.org, it takes 700 gallons of fresh water to produce a single cotton t-shirt. Not only does it negatively impact the environment to produce clothing, nearly 26 billion pounds of clothing go to landfills yearly, in which 95% of the clothing could be recycled or reused. A PEW research article showed that millennial and Gen Z Republicans view climate change as a serious issue, 13% more than their older conservative counterparts. This feeling of responsibility leads young people to search for more sustainable replacements for everyday things, such as reusing others' clothing from secondhand shops.
How aware are you of your environmental, your own personal environmental impacts? Because you mentioned that that's something that drives you.
Yeah, so I try to be really aware, and sometimes it's even a bad thing because I'll be really aware of something that I'm doing that's not good for the environment, but it's something that I can't avoid, but you're just painfully aware that every time you do it, it's bad for the environment. Whereas going thrifting is nice because I'm consciously aware that I'm doing something that could be slightly better in the long term. So it's one of the more positives of being consciously aware of what you're doing, kind of what you're putting out.
How does thrifting benefit the environment?
So I usually do it to protect from fast fashion, so that means basically I'm not constantly wasting more material that I can just reuse at a thrift store.
Some may wonder why these younger generations don't abstain from buying new clothing unless absolutely necessary. Isn't that the most sustainable option? Well, the fast fashion industry has spent billions of dollars on marketing to convince consumers that they must have new trending clothing in every season. In 2019, a survey was published in which the clothing industry spent $22.9 billion on advertising. Being raised and constantly consuming this marketing, there is a constant urge to update one's closet. Thus, why younger generations enjoy shopping at thrift stores, if it fills their need to constantly buy while still reducing their environmental impact and costs.
Yeah, well, I don't know, it's just, again, that's a big thing, because I'm definitely guilty of that. I am a frequent buyer. I have all kinds of clothes that I've had for years, but I'm also constantly buying on top of that. So that's definitely a big habit of mine.
The original purpose of thrift stores was to sell reused clothing for a low price so apparel is more accessible to lower income communities. However, because of this newfound popularity to buy secondhand, these stores are quickly undergoing the process of gentrification, which is objectively the biggest negative impact this new trend has caused. Gentrification refers to the concept of displacing residents in lower income neighborhoods by price gouging the cost of living there. This same philosophy is occurring within thrift stores. Prices of clothing are increasing and the constant need for interesting clothing is being capitalized on. While a pair of jeans cost $6 to purchase secondhand in 2010, jeans are often marked as over $20 in today's society. There are also many secondhand retail websites that have drastically increased price points. One of the most popular websites is called Depop. This site allows individual users to sell either their own clothes or, more commonly, thrifted clothing that the seller found interesting.
And like it's definitely important to talk about because I've seen like TikTokers with huge platforms that are really big Depop sellers that go into thrift stores and just buy like these mountains of clothes, so probably like $100 worth of clothes from thrift stores that are like name brand and things like that they have full intentions of reselling and profiting off of, which is fine on one hand, you know, but on the other, it's also really not because it's making those prices go up for the people that need it. And I don't know. That's not.
Yeah. As someone who has been thrifting for a while, do you think that like stigmas around thrifting have changed recently? Like,
Yeah, big time. So like I said, I grew up shopping from thrift stores and thrift shopping and like even going garage sailing when I was little. Like they're huge parts of my life, who I am, and they were huge parts of my childhood. And I would often get judged in elementary school and in middle school, especially in a richer small town, if I was not wearing like the cutest cool new clothes from Justice or Gap or like just like American Eagle, Hollister, you know, all that stuff. You know, that was what was popular when I was growing up. And that's just not what I was buying. You know, if I saw it in a thrift store, that'd probably be the first thing I'd go to because I'd be like, ooh, that's a steal, that's a find. But yeah, it definitely was something that I got judged for in my younger years that I'm now almost sort of praised for in my community and in my generation, which is really, it's weird to see how it's flipped, for sure.
Secondhand shopping allows greater access to self-expression through lower-priced clothing, is environmentally friendly, and helps greatly reduce the stigma around buying secondhand clothing. There are pros and cons to thrifting, and ultimately the issue of whether or not thrifting is worth the drawbacks is up to the individual consumer and only the individual consumer.
Big corporations need to be held accountable way more often than they ever are because it always ends up like the people are feeling guilty, like, and Gen Z is a perfect example of that, like with the like rise of thrifting and like the Visco girls with their metal straws and their hydro flasks, when in reality, like, sure, haha, funny joke, whatever, they're actually trying to do their best to be more sustainable because they feel pressure and they feel guilt to save the environment. And really what we should be doing instead is holding those bigger corporations accountable.